1 John chapter 2, verses 15 through 17. Before we even get into that, I want to say thank you, Brother Nathan, for leading us in worship tonight. Brother Caleb is sick. We think he may have the flu. And so you'd rather have Brother Nathan here singing than Brother Caleb bringing you the flu. So we will add him to our prayer list here in just a little bit. But as we walk through the focus method, we want to familiarize. So who, what, when, where, why. And that hasn't really changed much. We're still talking about John, who is writing this to the churches in the region of Ephesus in the late first century following the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. And the topic that he's addressing is discipleship and the role of Jesus in our discipleship and the place of Jesus in that. And that's kind of where we track from where we've been in kind of the introductory matters to where we get into those imperative commands that he's going to give us. And he gives us about 10 through the remainder of his letter here. And we're going to deal with the first one tonight. So that's kind of the who, what, when, where, why. The orient, what does it say about God? What does it say about man? What does it say about the relationship between the two? Well, it's telling us that God is a knowable God, that he has revealed himself to us, and that he is a God who desires relationship with us. He desires love and affection from us because he has love and affection for us, but he does not force that on us. He gives us free will and a choice, and so we have to choose whether we'll love him or whether we're going to love the things that he has created. And so that's kind of the tension that we're going to be wrestling with in these verses, that we have a choice to make, and the choice is, will we love God or will we love God's things? And so that's kind of the orientation, the coordinate as we go through the points here. We got the starting point, the checkpoints, and the end point. So the starting point for this would be to ask yourself that question, if you had to identify what you love truly in the truest sense of love. And love is we'll talk about this in just a second. Love is a loaded word, right? We're going to talk about love and what that means. But if you had to really just kind of identify in your life what you love and rank those things, where does God kind of fall in that? And so what we're going to see as we walk through here is the challenge of loving God, and how we can do that, and why we need to do that, and what comes from failing to do that. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then so the end point, the destination, the big idea here is that it's our responsibility to choose to love God and to choose to love him every day. And so that's kind of where we're going. And so let's get there, and we'll start by reading the verses, and then we'll start to unpack them, and then we'll answer Brian's questions. All right. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, I see. All right, 1 John chapter 2, beginning of verse 15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride in possessions, is not from the Father, but is from the world, and the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. So he's coming out of this poetic section, and we kind of said that the poetic section was there as kind of an ending of that first kind of introductory section and the beginning into his more practical teaching sessions of the letter. And so if you start to notice as you're reading the scripture, as you're reading the Bible, a lot of times there will be those grammatical, linguistic, or contextual clues that will help you with something. Like Paul, a lot of times, what he likes to do is you'll have what you might call the Pauline parenthetical, which is he'll state something, right? And then he'll go through all this, and then he'll restate it on the back end. And that's the Pauline parenthetical. So you'll have this parentheses. It's kind of building a bracket around this. This is the main idea. This is the main idea restated, and this is all the meat on the bone of that main idea. And that's how you know he's finished with that thought and he's moving to another thought. John here, he uses this very prosaic section that we talked about last week to kind of demark that he's shifting gears a little bit. And so that helps us understand he's got this transition. But even though he's transitioning from one kind of concept to another concept, there's still some of those things that tie in, right? And so if we go back and look at what he's just written, we'll kind of begin to think about how that's tying into where he's going, because he's going to point us in a direction. He says, if we go back to verse 12, I'm writing to you, little children, because your sins are forgiven for his name's sake. I'm writing to you, fathers, because you know him who is from the beginning. I'm writing to you, young men, because you have overcome the evil one. I write to you, children, because you know the Father. I write to you, fathers, because you know him who is from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you are strong. The word of God abides in you, and you have overcome the evil one. So he's writing to these little children, these fathers, and these young men. We talked about the different kind of stratuses there that he's addressing these believers in. And then he comes to this point. He says, do not love the world or the things that are in the world. And so we talked about this being an imperative command. And then he says, the world or the things in the world. Right? So what does he mean here when he's telling each of these people that he's just written this, all these believers, no matter which area you fall in, to not love the world? Now remember, we've been talking about sin. And we said, is it a specific sin or is it sin in general? And we said, yes, but the specific sin was the sin of kind of underestimating, understating, misunderstanding the role of Jesus in our salvation. You guys remember we talked about that a few weeks ago, right? And so he's been talking about this, the sin of misplacing Jesus, of not having Jesus be where he's supposed to be, which falls right in line with this, to love the world and to do that in opposition to or in negligence to loving God is something that we have to wrestle with. And love is a very, very weird word for us. For example, me and the kids, I had promised Isla, so you guys are starting to know my family fairly well. Liam, right? Prototypical teenage boy, right? Has no clue what's going on around him half the time. He just kind of floats through life, and it's easy. Isla is her mother. She's Stephanie 2.0, which means Isla has a birthday coming up. August the 30th is her 15th birthday. She has a thing on her phone that tells her how many minutes and seconds it is until her birthday. She has a party that she has planned for her birthday. She's already invited the people she wants to come to the party. She's created the menu that she wants served at the party. She has the events catered, planned out what events she wants to do at what time with the people that are coming over. And then she wants us to kind of make sure that we are checking all these boxes for her. She is a planner and an organizer, and nothing happens to that kid on accident. She's very much and has everything going. And so they have their own kind of ways about doing things. And so with her birthday coming up, and it being 15, it's like, whatever. And she came to me the other day and she said, Dad, I was watching YouTube and I saw a commercial, and Hobby Lobby has their fall decorations on sale for 40% off. And I said, really? And she said, yes. She said, I would like to go. She said, I asked Mom, and Mom refuses to go to Hobby Lobby. She said that's really more of a dad thing. And so, and she's not wrong. I do go to Hobby Lobby. I like to go to Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby, don't judge me. What is it these people say? Only God can judge me, Harold. I like to go there. It's calming to me. I never buy anything when I'm there, really, but I like to go, especially when they've got the fall and the Christmas decorations out. So pretty much 10 months out of the year, I really like to go to Hobby Lobby. It's just kind of calming to me. I go through and I smell the candles and I see the Christmas lights and all this kind of stuff. And I enjoy that. So I said, sure, I'll take you. So I'm looking at the schedule this week, and it's a crazy week. And it ended up leaving work a little bit early today to keep an appointment. And so I called the kids. I'm like, hey, if you guys will be ready, I'll pick you up. When I'm done with my appointment, I'll take you to Cookville. We'll go to Hobby Lobby, grab something to eat, and then head to church. So they're all excited about that. Well, then my appointment was a little bit longer than it was supposed to be, and then it started raining on us in Cookville, coming a flood, and so it took a little bit longer to get there. Dropped them off at Hobby Lobby. I'm trying to get off the phone with someone that I work with, and finally get off and go in, and she's got her stuff, and I told her, I said, hey, you can pick out something I'll get you for your birthday. So she picked out a candle, a pumpkin candle, and some kind of patch for her backpack or something like that. Sure, absolutely, that'd be great. So got that, we got in the vehicle, and we're like, okay, let's just swing through Taco Bell real quick. And we get to Taco Bell, and apparently half of Putnam County has decided they were going to go to Taco Bell too. So I said, we're not going to Taco Bell, let's go to Sonic. So pull up to Sonic. The other half of Putnam County is at Sonic. And so I say, well, I had told you guys we were going to get some food on the way to church. What are we going to do? Because we didn't eat anything before we left. So we're driving down the road, and I'm like, hey, nobody will be at Hardee's this time of day. And so we swung in Hardee's. We got burgers. We're doing all the things. We're coming in on two wheels, and we're just there's a lot of stuff going on. And we're sitting out here in the parking lot, and Kyle pulls up, and he pulls in beside me. I'm sitting there talking to Isla, and Isla says, "Hey, Dad, I don't want my French fries. Do you want some of my French fries?" And I'm like, "Nah, I don't really want any French fries." And then I have one. Holy cow, that was a good French fry. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take those. And so then I got her French fries, and I started eating her French fries. And I'm like, man, I love these French fries. These are good French fries. Do I really love the French fries? Boy, that's a long story to get to the issue of love, wasn't it? We are Baptists, though, and so you understand love and food and all that stuff. We use love. Just, it's such a weird word to us. We talk about, I love coffee. I love these French fries. You know, I love the volunteers. Right, Justin? I pray for your salvation, buddy. And so we talk about loving things. Do we really love those things? No. Not really. We talk about loving people. Do we really love those people when we say we love them? Sometimes. Maybe not all the time. Love is a word we throw around. So when he tells us, do not love the world or the things in the world, what we need to remember is that this word that for love is tied to agape. And what you've always been taught is a very, very wrong Greek concept here. Because what you've been told is that this is the love of God. This is a special kind of love. No, this is just not phileo. It's not brotherly love as you look at someone who would be like a brother to you or like a sister to you, someone that you have a close bond with. And it's not eros. It's not like romantic love that you feel for a spouse. This is just a genuine, heartfelt affection and fondness and love for this other person or this other thing. It's a genuine love. And God has a genuine love for us. We're not brothers to God, so he doesn't phileo us. And we're not romantically involved with God, so he doesn't eros us. Agape is used in that way. It's just love. It's what love is really supposed to be. And so he says, do not agape the world. And the actual word translated, that's what I was doing when Nathan was singing. I was just making sure that I was remembering my language correct here. Is the Greek word cosmos. So cosmos. What is the cosmos when we talk about the cosmos? Well, you're not thinking about Earth, are you? When I say something is cosmic, or we're talking about the cosmos, what are we talking about? We're talking about the universe. And so when he says this, I think sometimes we're just thinking about materialistic things here. But what he's actually talking about is really just creation. Don't love creation, the thing that God has created, or the things that are within the creation. because this word, the word translated as things, is actually, it's a concept and not a word. There's not really a word here that just is translated as things. It's a word tied to cosmos that means the things that make up this thing. And so what he's saying here is, do not love, agape, the cosmos, or the things created in the cosmos. That's the command. The imperative command is to choose not to love these things. Now, here's the problem that we have with this, right? It's the word love. Because what we're told in our culture, right, is that you don't choose who you love. Love is just this overwhelming emotion that you don't have any control over. You don't have any say in. Either you love someone or you don't. And so we talk about this concept of, I hate this concept, guys, okay? I hate this concept of falling in love. Love is a choice. When you're married, right, if you've been married for any time at all, you have to choose to love your spouse. And you have to choose to demonstrate that love to your spouse. Or you're choosing to not do that. And we start talking about marriages that, the spouses are drifting apart because they're not choosing each other. They're not choosing to love each other. Not choosing to demonstrate love and affection for one another. They start taking each other for granted. And that's what we're talking about. It's not that you're falling out of love with that person. It's that you're choosing not to pursue that person. You're choosing, either passively or actively, you're choosing to withhold the decision of that person and to put them first and to honor them. It's like when you have chosen this person, you say, this person is attractive, I like them, I'm going to pursue this person. You're probably starting with eros. This person is attractive, and you find them physically attractive, and they're funny or whatever it is, and so you want to be romantic with this person. But what happens is, with a good marriage, eventually over time, eros transitions from eros to agape. You just love that person. And when you love somebody, you're pursuing them. You're making them a priority. And so what he's talking about here when he's talking about do not love, agape, the cosmos, he's saying you have to choose to put God first. Because if you don't choose to put God first, you will by default put other things before him. Whatever you are pursuing, whatever you're investing yourself in, whatever it is that you think is the most important priority in your life, that's the thing that you love. I can tell my wife that I love her, but if my day-to-day living demonstrates that I'm more devoted to my work than I am my wife, what do I love? So that's really the heart of what he's wrestling with here. He's telling these people, these early believers, these little children, these fathers in the faith, these young men who have overcome the evil one. He's reminding them, hey, the battle's not over. Choose to love. And when we phrase it that way, that's a very biblical concept, isn't it? We go all the way back to the Old Testament. Today I set before you life and death. Choose you this day whom you'll serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. It's a choice. And it's a choice that you and you alone can make. And so he's telling them, number one, the first commandment in John's epistle here is choose who you'll love. So do not love the world or the things in the world. And then he kind of clarifies. He goes even beyond that. And he says that it's not even just choosing to love the world, but it's choosing to love the world and the things in the world, right, is evidence that the love of the Father is not in you. Now, how is that possible? Because to know God And to love God means for him to be the priority of your life. It means for him to be the most important. It means for him to be the thing that you're pursuing at the expense of all other things. That's what fasting is. When we talk about fasting, it's not just about not eating. It's about you're taking the time that you would normally set for food, right? Which food is essential for your physical life. And it's saying, God, I need to eat to stay alive physically. But more than I need that, I need spiritual life from you. So the time that I would spend eating, I'm not going to eat, and I'm going to pursue you instead. That's what fasting is really all about. It's about saying, God, you're more important than this other stuff. You're more important than physical life. You're more important than this pleasure that I would get from this thing. For people that kind of fast, like leading up to Easter, they may fast, chocolate or coffee or something like that, which that's a whole different conversation. But the point of it is to not just do without something, but to say, God, you're more important than this something. That's the point. Because to know God, to experience God, is to realize nothing else really matters in comparison. Nothing else matters in comparison. So he's saying here, do not agape the cosmos or the things in the cosmos. If anyone loves the cosmos, if they agape the cosmos, the agape of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride in possessions, which is interesting translation there, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And so when you start talking about this, right? We kind of talked about this a little bit Sunday, but I don't know how to spell possessions, 2 S's. Some are going to say life here. And the reason they're going to say life there is because the actual Greek word here is bios. And so like bios is a word. It means like you're studying biology. It's the study of life, but it's like the physical life. Whereas in Greek, Zoe would be the higher life. That would be like eternal life and the spirit of life, the spirit of living. And so if you look at this, flesh, eyes, and the pride of life, and if you think about the fall, right, in the Old Testament, Adam and Eve, right, and Satan is tempting Eve with this fruit from the tree that's been forbidden. How's that described? Do you guys remember? Right? She said, the Bible tells us that she looked and she saw that it was desirable to be eaten. Yeah, let's find that real quick. Let's just read that. I didn't plan on all this, but I think you're probably right. That's a good guess. Yeah. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So the woman, okay, here it is, chapter 3, verse 6. Genesis, you're right, it's in Genesis, Brian. Genesis 3:6. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her. Had you guys ever tied that together? Harold already knew this. This old hat for Harold. So what he's saying here is this is the oldest temptation. You go back to Genesis 3. The temptation to make idols out of the things that God has made. And remember, how is it that these things become idols? What did God say about these things? God created and said, it is good. These are good things. They're good things. Food is good, right? But food corrupted by sin can become an idol. Love. Love is a good thing, right? God is love. Love corrupted in the fall, twisted and mangled by sin, can be bad. So that's where we have to be careful in trying to define good and bad, because what we think is good may actually be bad. What we think is bad may actually, in eternity, in God's eyes, be good. We can't judge those things because we don't know until after the fact how God's going to use a thing, how it's going to be a blessing or a curse to us. And that's why we need God's leadership, His guidance, His direction when we're making these decisions. And so when we go back and we're like, well, it looks good. I could eat this and I could survive, and I've got to survive. God designed my body to eat, right? And it looks good. It's pretty. It doesn't look toxic or anything like that. And if I eat it, I will have this possession. I will have wisdom that I don't currently have. Those are good things. How could these good things be bad? That's what he's talking about here. When we love good things, we're replacing the greatest thing. That's how they become idols. This is what idolatry is. A lot of times we just think about idolatry being a little statue somewhere in a closet in a house somewhere, and we go bow down and we worship it, or we burn incense to it, or we do something like that. No. Idolatry is any time we take a good thing that God has made and we think that it's better or greater than the God who made it. And you may not say that with your mouth. You may not think that with your mind, but you demonstrate that with your actions. When you pursue that thing, no matter how good it is, instead of pursuing the God who created it. And so he says, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of possessions is not from the Father, but is from the world. Why? Why is that distinction necessary? Because we think, well, God made everything. God did make everything. God said it was good. But when the fall came, everything God created, including us, was mangled by sin. Everything is touched with sin in some way. And it can be twisted. It can become selfish. It can become self-serving. It can be a thing, no matter how good it is, that hinders us from focusing on God. Is everybody tracking? Yeah? I see some thoughtful faces. I see Harold's face. We're not going to talk about Harold's face. All right. So he's saying that these things, they're from the world in that, not that the world created itself, but that the world has fallen. And the world is where he's going here, is passing away. The world isn't eternal. It's not going to be there forever. The world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. And so what he's saying here is that these things are temporary. God is the only eternal. And even the world that we have around us is limited. It's not eternal. And what we ultimately know is going to happen is that at the end there will be a new heaven and a new earth, a new creation, a new physical, a new physical place that we will call home forever and ever and ever and ever. Satan will be cast out. Sin will be judged. There will be no more temptation to fall. Everything will be as God designed it. And at that time, that relationship with that physical place is going to be different than the relationship that we have with this physical place, because this physical place is touched by sin. It is contaminated. And that's one of the things that really drives me bonkers when we start talking about love. Love is kind of one of those, it's one of those cultural hotspots for us. And, people talk about love is love. No, love is not love. Love is not love. There is love that honors God and honors God's design. And then there's selfish love. There's self-centered love. There's self-focused love. Love is not just love. Another one that drives me nuts is when people say, God doesn't make mistakes. Right? And why do they always say God doesn't make mistakes? Because they're trying to justify some bad decision that they're making. God's not making that mistake. You are. God made the world and everything was perfect. It was great. And then sin came in and sin twisted what God had made. And so God doesn't make mistakes, but the world is twisted because it's not the world that God made anymore. It's a corruption of it. So when people say love is love or God doesn't make mistakes, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little bit, because it just shows very, very lazy and sloppy theology. It's the theology of people who want to justify their sin. So, where he's ultimately going here is this concept of Antichrist that we'll get into next week. But I want to pause here, and I want us to have a moment to kind of walk through this and ask questions, because you may have some questions before our prayer time, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to get into some of those. And it's not that I may not know the answer to the question that you ask, but I will do my very best to give you what I do know. How's that sound? So who has a question? Yes, sir. Other Brian. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think we see that a lot in our lives. There's times when, like if you've got a loved one that's making a terrible decision, in our kind of worldly, kind of skewed perspective on love, we may think that the greatest form of love is to support that person and to come alongside them and say, well, I'm going to support you and I affirm you and I'm going to da-da-da-da-da-da. When actually the greatest love might be to say, no, this isn't what God's designed, and this isn't the way we need to do that. Now, I think there's ways to do that, but I think about it being a father, if we live like that all the time, I don't know about Coco, but my kids, well, if I just let them do whatever they wanted to do and say, guys, I love you and I'm going to support you no matter what you do, well, they would live off of chocolate and monsters, never take a shower, never study, never grow, never mature, never do any of those things. That's not loving. That's neglect. My kids may want to go play on the street. Is it loving for me to say, hey guys, I support your choice to go play in the street? That's not loving at all. So I think that our love, sometimes we may be well-intentioned, but misinformed. Absolutely. And even as someone who tries to follow the Lord, I've messed it up, man. I've made bad decisions, and I've had to own up to them. But I think that's something that we have to know, that we need God's guidance, even in those good things, to know how to do it well. And sometimes we still have to go back and say, I messed this one up. That's a good point, bro.
One saying I like along those lines is, God is love, but love is not God.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Conception of love.
Yeah, that's a good one. Other questions? Thoughts? This is deep stuff, guys. I mean, we're getting. You look at this and you're like, oh, this is simple, but it's not quite as simple as we may think it is on the surface. So, questions?
What if you have a passion for something? Like with me with my painting, I just look forward to when I can sit down and I can do my paintings, or I'll see something that will really spark me. You know, like, oh, I would love to try to paint that or something like that. I mean, is that wrong? No. I mean, it's something that I love.
Yeah. But I think that even you would say you love it, and you're using more the American use of the word love, and you would not describe that emotion that you have for painting the same as you would describe your affection for God, right? You know, and that's I think that's where the language gets difficult for us sometimes, and I think that's what C.S. Lewis is really good about in Screwtape Letters. If you've never read Screwtape Letters, I highly recommend it. Just be ready to think backwards in some of the sections, because it can get kind of difficult in some of the sections. But what he's talking about is we're created by God with personalities, and each of us are different. And there are going to be some things that each of us enjoy. God put joy in the world because he wants us to experience joy. He wants us to experience the joy that you have when you're painting, right? But he doesn't want us to pursue that at the neglection of our relationship with him. He wants that to be an avenue through which we enjoy him, an avenue through which we are closer to him. You know, as you're painting a sunset, you know, maybe you're like, wow, look, just the majesty of God and how he's done this. You know, you can do that, or you could be like, you know, not thinking about God at all ever and just focused on painting and trying to do all that. So I think that's what C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters does so well, is saying, hey, listen, you know, God created you in a way to enjoy facets of creation, right? But not at the expense of enjoying him. It's kind of a way of, I think the way C.S. Lewis kind of presents it there is it's like God our Father created these desires in us because as a father, he wants to kind of walk with us through them and enjoy them together. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thoughts? Before Brian gets turned loose. All right, tag.
So love is an active choice, right?
Yeah.
And I think going back to the nature of God, that's just what I was thinking about while you were talking, is that tells us something about God. Love is an active choice. It's an active thing of God, too, and that points to relationship. And his dealings in the world are not just deism, not just separated from us. He's there.
And so what you just hit on there is incredibly important for us to all remember. God doesn't love you because he has to. God loves you because he chooses to. Go, Brian.
Well, that was that. But another question, the world is passing away. So I look at that as the world is passing away because of Jesus' incarnation, death, and resurrection. And the kingdom is at hand, it's growing. Was the world passing away before Jesus?
Yes. Yes, I would say.
That hadn't happened.
Yes, I would say so, because from Genesis 3, from that pronouncement, there's going to be an end. So from that moment forward, it's passing away physically. But for the believer, not only is the world passing away physically, but it's also passing away spiritually, because its hold on us lessens the closer we get to Christ. Does that make sense? So I think there's a physical sense that it's passing away and the spiritual sense that it's passing away. And that the closer I get to Jesus, the less this stuff matters.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. As we get older, I don't know if this is just old age, but a lot of the stuff is less appealing. As you grow closer to the Lord, you don't want to watch certain TV shows or listen to a certain type of music.
Yeah.
It's not appealing.
You know what? I saw a meme the other day that really kind of summarized it for me. Is it basically said everything that I thought was a punishment when I was a kid is what I looked forward to now as an adult. Like I'm going to go home early and go to bed and eat my vegetables and take a shower. Yeah, absolutely. I think as we mature, as we grow older, we do have a different relationship with those things. Absolutely. You're acting like you're out of questions. Do you have more? I'm really kind of surprised. I came expecting to be just.
Next week's going to be the Antichrist, so it might be a lot.
I'm sick that week, by the way. Yeah. No, no. Good questions. I mean, and the thing about it is, love is a hot topic in our society for many reasons. I think we have to, first of all, I think the biggest thing is it's completely unromantic to me to think about falling in love. I would much rather believe that my wife has chosen to love me as opposed to having no control over whether she loves me or not. Like today she could fall in love with me and tomorrow she could fall out of love with me. I think it's much more romantic to think that, after 50 years of marriage, a couple wakes up still choosing to honor each other and still choosing to pursue each other. I think that's much more romantic than thinking that because of some weird chemical attraction, 60 years ago, we just kind of got stuck together. That doesn't sound romantic to me. That sounds like the flu. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so love, I think for us in a modern context in this culture in America today, I think we have to kind of reclaim the thought of what love is and our understanding of it, that love is a choice. God's not going to command you to do something that you don't have any control over, any choice in. But what God will do is he will command you to do something that's incredibly difficult to do without him. It's incredibly difficult to choose to love someone day in and day out with all their flaws and their imperfections, especially if you live with them and you see those flaws and imperfections up close and personal every day, day after day, year after year. The only way that you can continue to do that through better or worse is to first be surrendered to God and let God lead you in the way of love. And so I think we have to really kind of drill into that concept of we are commanded to love. We are commanded to love God. You don't just fall in love with God. You choose to pursue God daily. You choose to love God. We are commanded to love our neighbor as ourselves. Well, you don't just have warm fuzzies for your neighbor because your neighbor's a weirdo. You have to choose to love your neighbor in spite of all the flaws and imperfections. That's what makes it a godly endeavor. If it was easy to do it, God wouldn't have to command us to do it. We just do it. And so to think about love in that perspective and then to put it in the context of choosing to love God versus choosing to love his creation. And that's where, like marriage, loving my spouse is not me loving my spouse and abandoning my love for God. In order for me to truly love my spouse, I have to first love God and let God teach me how to love my spouse. And so it's a love that is subservient to the love of God. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
Matthew 10:37, Jesus said, whoever loves father or mother more than.
Yeah.
Is that agape love that he's used in
I think so. What's the...
chapter 10, verse 37?
I'm pretty sure that is, but let me double check. Matthew 10, 37. No. Actually, that's Phileo. Yeah.
He's talking there about whoever has brotherly love
Yeah.
more than me. So we're supposed to have agape and phileo to God? Or
Yeah.
Jesus?
That'd be interesting. I would like to do a word study of that sometime and find Matthew's use of these words as opposed to Paul's and John's. That would be interesting. I've never done that. But that is Phileo.
Maybe because of the incarnation, Christ was here physically.
Well, and I'm wondering too, the context there in Matthew 10, is that not near where they've told him his mother is, or is that a different chapter? Sorry, guys, you get the live Bible study tonight. No, it's not. That's interesting. I'd like to figure out why Matthew uses that word there. It's a good question. Oh, hit the wrong button. Five. There we go. I'm going to look into that, Brian. My knee jerk is that Matthew is doing that because of the relationship between father and mother, and it's kind of the bond there that he's using phileo in that way. And I think that explains why agape is so easily used in John here, because it's more toward things and just creation in general, the cosmos. But that's just a knee jerk. That's just off the cuff. I'm not a Greek scholar. So, it's a good question. I'll look into that a little bit.